Back in the 1970s, the National Wrestling Alliance wasn't just a company, it was an empire built on trust. It was a sprawling network of territories, each with its own local hero, but they all paid tribute to one man, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. He was the traveling king, the face of the whole organization, and the keeper of its most sacred treasure. But with that power came a constant, nagging fear for the men who ran the alliance. A fear whispered in back rooms and over tense phone calls. The fear of the double cross. What if a champion, feeling the power of the gold and the roar of the crowd, just decided he wasn't going to lose? What if he took that 10 pounds of gold and held the entire sport hostage? See, in an era before ironclad contracts, the NWA's power really just rested on a gentleman's agreement. So to protect their investment, to protect the business itself, the Alliance Board didn't just need a charismatic showman. They needed an insurance policy. They needed a hammer to break the glass in case of emergency. They needed a shooter, a man so legitimately skilled, so dangerously tough, that no one in their right mind would ever dare cross him. A man who, if he had to, could cripple a rogue champion for real. They needed a man like Jack Brisco. To really get why Jack Brisco was so important, you have to understand the problem he represented the solution to. The NWA World Heavyweight Champion was booked years in advance, traveling from city to city, territory to territory. His job was to make the local hero look like $1 million before ultimately beating him, sending the fans home happy, but always leaving with the title. It was a formula that printed money. But it was a complete house of cards. If a champion decided to go into business for himself and refused to drop the belt as scheduled, the whole system would collapse. The credibility of the NWA, its promoters, and the entire illusion of pro wrestling would be shattered. They couldn't just fire him, he had the physical belt. They couldn't just send another wrestler to beat him, what if he refused to play along? This is where the idea of the shooter champion came in. The NWA needed a champion whose reputation for real fighting was so undeniable that the mere threat of a real fight was enough to keep everyone in line. He was the organization's human collateral. And by the early 1970s, the NWA had a situation. The reigning champion was the formidable Dory Funk Jr., a master technician himself. The man the board had reportedly chosen to be the next champion was Jack Brisco. For years, Brisco and Funk toured the country, wrestling to spectacular one-hour draws and building a rivalry that was supposed to end with a historic title change. The date was set for March 1973. But then, something happened. Reports came out that Dory Funk Jr. had been in a truck accident on his father's ranch, injuring his shoulder. The title match was off. To this day, wrestling historians and insiders argue about what really happened. Many, including Brisco, believed it might have been a convenient excuse cooked up by Dory Funk Sr., who didn't want his son to lose the championship to a fan favorite like Brisco. Whether the injury was real or just politics, the NWA had a problem. They needed to get the belt off of Funk Jr. The Alliance, according to the story, dodged a bullet by quickly putting the belt on a certified tough guy, Harley Race, who took it from Funk Jr. in May of 1973. Race was a respected veteran whose own toughness was beyond question. He was the perfect bridge. And just 2 months later, on July 20th, 1973, in Houston, Texas, the plan finally came together. Harley Race dropped the NWA World Heavyweight Championship to the man the Alliance had wanted all along. Jack Brisco was finally the champion. The insurance policy was now in effect. So what made Jack Brisco the perfect man for this high-stakes role? The answer was forged on the wrestling mats of Oklahoma State University, a powerhouse in amateur wrestling. Freddie Joe Jack Brisco, a proud Oklahoman of Chickasaw Nation descent, wasn't just a wrestler, he was a phenomenon. He actually turned down a football scholarship to chase his true passion. At OSU, he was a two-time All-American. In 1965, he became what is widely considered the first Native American to win an NCAA Division I National Wrestling Championship. The legend goes that during his undefeated senior season, not a single opponent managed to score a takedown on him. This wasn't sports entertainment, this was pure, raw athletic dominance. He was a master of leverage, a technical wizard who could tie a man in knots and make him beg for mercy without throwing a single punch. When he turned pro in 1965, trained by the legendary Leroy McGurk, he brought that terrifying credibility with him. Even the iconic Lou Thez, a man who defined what it meant to be a legit world champion, described Brisco as one of the toughest and most highly skilled wrestlers of the last 50 years. Brisco was the total package. He was handsome, charismatic, and the fans absolutely loved him. But under that babyface smile was the heart of a stone-cold amateur killer. He didn't need to scream or flex to prove his toughness. You could see it in his eyes, in the coiled, confident way he moved around the ring. He was the NWA's perfect weapon, a champion the fans would adore, but one the wrestlers in the back would deeply fear. If a challenger wanted to get cute, if they wanted to try and shoot on him and steal the belt for real, Brisco had the ability to break their arm, dislocate their shoulder, or choke them unconscious in seconds. And everybody knew it. His reign began with a new era of stability. He carried the 10 pounds of gold with a dignity and grace that brought respect back to the championship. He was a fighting champion, exactly what the NWA wanted its top star to be. But the very thing that made him the perfect insurance policy, his willingness to be the workhorse, the reliable anchor of the alliance, would end up being the catalyst for his own destruction. The NWA didn't just need a champion. It needed a man who could survive a schedule that would break any normal human being. And Jack Brisco, for a while, was that man. For over 500 days, Jack Brisco was the king of the wrestling world. But being king wasn't exactly glamorous. It was a grueling, soul-crushing grind. The NWA's business model demanded that the champion be everywhere, all at once. He was the ultimate attraction, the man who could boost a territory's attendance just by showing up. This meant a relentless travel schedule that was almost absurd. The stories from that era paint a brutal picture of his life on the road. Imagine defending the title one night in Richmond, Virginia, the next in Washington, D.C., only to then fly across the globe for a title defense in Tokyo, before immediately flying back to defend the belt in St. Louis a night or two later. It was a blur of airports, cheap hotels, and sold-out arenas. There was no off-season, no sick days, no time to heal. The physical toll was immense. There's a staggering story that's become part of his legend, that he once defended the title 22 times in just 30 days. Think about that. Nearly every single night for a month, Jack Brisco was in the ring for up to an hour, wrestling against the top star of that territory, a fresh, motivated opponent trying to make a name for himself at the champ's expense. While the outcomes were planned, the physicality wasn't. The bumps were real. The chair shots were real. The exhaustion was absolutely real. Brisco had to absorb the best his opponents had to offer, night after night, just to make them look credible. He was the NWA's ultimate shock absorber, taking all the punishment so the system could keep making money. He was a master at making his opponents look like world beaters before he'd inevitably find a way to win. This level of performance, this consistency, was what the NWA paid for. It's what their business was built on. In December 1974, the NWA made a significant move, sending Brisco to Japan to defend the title against the legendary Giant Baba. On December 2nd in Kagoshima, Baba defeated Brisco to win the NWA World title. This was a huge event, seen by many as a strategic decision by the NWA to strengthen its international partnerships. But it was a short-term loan. Just 7 days later, on December 9th in Toyohashi, Jack Brisco defeated Giant Baba to win the title back, bringing the gold back to the United States. Imagine the pressure of that week. Flying to a foreign country, dropping the most important championship in the world to their national hero, and then having to win it back just a week later. It was a testament to the trust the NWA had in him, but it was just another week on the job, another series of brutal, high-pressure matches that added more miles to an already battered body. This was the price of being the insurance policy. The NWA had found a man so reliable, so tough, and so professional that they could ask anything of him. They could send him anywhere, put him in the ring with anyone, and know that their business was safe. But that reliability was being paid for by Jack Brisco's body, one painful bump at a time. The machine was slowly, inevitably, breaking down. By 1984, after a second, shorter NWA title reign and years of grueling tag team runs with his brother Gerald, Jack Brisco started to step away. He was only 42 years old, an age when many wrestlers are still in their prime, but his body was screaming at him. He was tired of the non-stop schedule, of living by the clock, of the constant pain that had just become his new normal. He famously recalled that upon retiring, he took off his watch and never wore one again, finally free from the tyranny of someone else's schedule. He walked away from the ring and, with his brother, focused on their family business, the Brisco Brothers Body Shop in Florida. That same year, the wrestling landscape was changing forever. The Brisco brothers, who owned minority shares in Georgia Championship Wrestling, became instrumental figures in one of the most pivotal moments of the era. Unhappy with the company's direction, they helped persuade other shareholders to sell their stakes to a brash, ambitious promoter from the North, Vince McMahon. This move, known as Black Saturday, gave McMahon control of GCW's valuable Saturday night time slot on TBS, a crucial step in his national expansion that would eventually help put the NWA's territory system out of business. In another twist of fate, the Briscos had already made another contribution to the future of wrestling. In the late 1970s, they had spotted a charismatic young bodybuilder named Terry Bollea playing bass in a Florida bar. They introduced him to trainer Hiro Matsuda, setting in motion the career of the man who would become Hulk Hogan, the very superstar McMahon would use to build his global empire. Jack Brisco, the man who had been the bedrock of the NWA, had inadvertently played a part in lighting the fuse that would blow it all up. As the 80s wrestling boom exploded, fueled by McMahon's rock and wrestling vision, the clinical, mat-based style that Brisco had perfected began to fade from the spotlight. The era of the shooter was making way for the era of the superhero. And in this new world, Jack Brisco risked becoming a forgotten legend. While he was honored with inductions into multiple halls of fame, including the WWE Hall of Fame in 2008, his name wasn't always in the greatest of all time conversation for a new generation of fans. They knew Hogan, Savage, and Warrior. They didn't know the quiet, stoic Oklahoman who had carried the sport on his back. His later years were a quiet struggle against the bill that had finally come due. He battled emphysema and severe circulatory problems. His body, which had absorbed so much punishment, was failing him. On February 1st, 2010, Jack Brisco passed away at the age of 68 due to complications from open-heart surgery. It was a quiet end for a man whose career had been defined by roaring crowds and unimaginable pressure, though his passing was deeply mourned by those in the industry who knew his true value. His body, the NWA's ultimate insurance policy, had finally paid out its last claim. Jack Brisco's story is a paradox. His reputation for being an indestructible, legitimate fighting machine was exactly why he was trusted to guarantee the integrity of the World Championship. The NWA needed his credibility, his toughness, his unwavering professionalism. They used that credibility to build their empire, sending him on a punishing, non-stop tour of the world that filled arenas and lined promoters' pockets. But in doing so, they completely consumed him. They took the toughest man in their sport and ground him down until there was nothing left to give. He was the perfect champion for his time, a bridge between the gritty realism of the old-timers and the dawning age of sports entertainment. He brought a dignity and respect to the NWA title that few have ever matched, He was the insurance policy that protected an entire industry, but there was no policy to protect him. His legacy isn't written in flashy catchphrases or cartoonish merchandise. It's written in every grueling mile he traveled, every painful bump he took, and in the quiet dignity with which he carried the weight of a wrestling empire on his broken body. He was the shooter who saved the title, and the forgotten legend who paid the ultimate price. What do you think? Is Jack Brisco the most underrated NWA World Champion of all time? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look back at wrestling history, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching.